Hello again. Our very special guest today is an actress whose career received a boost for not being able to say no. A multi-time Oscar nominee for her many memorable performances and twice recipient of the coveted statuette, she is the dynamic Shelley Winters. And now, here's your man of the half hour, Skip E Lowe.
Shelley Winters. Aldo in, what was that, Oklahoma?
Yes, I played Ado Annie.
Ado Annie.
Yeah.
Come on, tell me about that.
I'm just a girl who can't
Celeste
say
Holmes
no.
did that first.
Yes,
did
she did it first. I did it in its 5th year.
Uh-huh.
And I'm still a bit like that. Anytime anything puts something in front of me, I sign. Right now I've signed a contract that I'm going to lose. I've lost 12 pounds, and I'm going to lose another 48 pounds by July 4th.
Really?
Yes.
You do look thinner.
I know, that's why I've got a double chin. Your face begins to, but that's all right.
But we
can take care of that.
You look great. Shelley,
Thank you.
St. Louis. Born?
Missouri, born.
You and Tennessee Williams, huh?
Yes.
Tom?
Yeah, I don't know why he had such a southern accent and I didn't. I never figured it out.
But you went to New York, Brooklyn, didn't you? After?
Yes. I sort of think of myself as a Brooklyn girl. I went there at 9 years old, and then I went to Hollywood at 16, so I don't know where I really am from.
Yeah, but you know something? I love you. I loved what you said about Daria Anne Frank, Anne Frank. Millie Perkins. She, evidently, she's non-Jewish. And you got a hold of her, and you said, come on, I want to teach you what the...
Well, I tried to. Unfortunately, the first day of shooting, the way it had, what had happened was I wanted Susan Strasberg to play the role. She had played it on Broadway. But unfortunately, she may kill me for this. It's in my second book. Shelley,
Part
the
2.
Middle of My Century, Part 2. She was involved with Richard Burton in a romance.
Right.
And I knew George Stevens because I'd worked with him in A Place in the Sun and nominated as Best Actress. And I knew his ego was such that he didn't want to, that he wanted to direct her himself.
Right.
I tried to get her to send a wire to George Stevens and say, "Dear Mr. Stevens, I'd like to have a test with you without my father, Lee Strasberg, or my mother, Paula Strasberg." And she wouldn't do it. She was doing a play on Broadway, Time Remembered. And she was involved in her first romance, and she just wouldn't do it.
She refused the part.
Yeah, well, he didn't offer it to her, but Audrey Hepburn had supposed to do it, but in those days they did things like that. They offered her husband a film to direct, Green Mansions, I think.
A great movie, too. Anthony Perkins.
Yeah, and she did that instead. And so they had to look for another Anne Frank. And Millie was wonderful. She was very good, but she didn't really know anything about the background of the people.
Shelley, you had a lot to do, though. You got her on the side. You showed her about King David or whatever.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, it's sort of strange. The directors, I don't know whether I can ever do television because I never can mind my own business. I'm a creative actress, and I get involved in the whole picture. And I was watching the first scene where we come up the steps to hide in the attic, and the boy and girl, Millie Perkins and Richard Byer, are burning their stars.
Yes.
And I'm sitting next to George Stevens, and I say, "Cut!" And I thought he was going to kill me. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "They left out something that was in the diary." He said, "This is a film. We have to leave things out." I said, "But it's very important. The golden Jewish star is the Star of David. It's the shield that in fighting their enemies they used. Not what the Nazis branded them with." And the little girl says that to him. And I thought he was going to kill me for stopping the shooting, but he just looked at me, and then he said, "Ivan Moffat, Brown," and he went into his trailer, rewrote the scene, and put that back in. And every time I see the picture, I'm very proud that I had the guts to stop that.
Otto Frank. Tell me about Otto Frank.
I
mean, you won the award for that.
Yes.
You gave it to you brought it to Holland. You gave it to them.
Yes.
Anne Frank said
It was very hard to do.
You gave that award away.
Well, there's an Anne Frank museum that's wonderful in Amsterdam. It's called the Museum Against Intolerance. And when Otto Frank had never seen the play,
Never.
Never. And he just couldn't, because they were his family and they were all destroyed.
Yes.
And he came to watch on the set a couple of scenes, and he sat there almost shivering. And then I went over to talk to him, and he said, Shelley, you will win the Oscar for this picture. And I said, why do you think? He said, you are very like the woman. Almost exactly. She was courageous and funny and silly. And she kept all our spirits up. And he saw the scene where the Nazis were coming up the steps.
The time you were doing that movie, difficult? You had some memories?
Yes.
It was difficult.
Very hard to do.
It was.
I had heard when I was a kid that I had relatives who were killed in concentration camps. But I don't know, it was about 10 years or 9 years. Anyway, I said to Otto Frank, if I win the Oscar, I will bring it to the museum.
Right.
And he said that would be very difficult to do. I said, yes, but I'll do it. So I did it, but it was about 9 years later, and I'd won another one.
So it's in a glass case right now.
Yes, in Amsterdam.
Why is it in a glass case?
Well, I'll tell you. So when I brought it there, I was doing a film with Susanna Yark and Moore, Roger Moore, called, well, whatever it was.
Right.
I made 100 films. I don't always remember. And I took it one Sunday from my Oscar from Brussels to Amsterdam. And I went up to the museum, and I looked at the lady there, and I said, I had promised Otto Frank to give this to the museum. And she looked at it, she said, well, he won't be here for 5 minutes. I mean, can you wait? And I said, I didn't expect to meet him here. This was 9 years ago. And she said, well, he lives in Switzerland, and he comes to the museum twice a year.
Oh, and this is one of the...
And he came about 5 minutes later, and he saw me, and all the kids who were, maybe 1 million children see that museum. And he said, why don't we go in the other room and talk? And one of the young men who said, I'm a cub reporter for an Australian newspaper. Can I come and hear what you're talking about? And I said, sure. And Otto Frank said, come in the office. And we talked about the film and how it was really spooky. It was a sense of deja vu when I saw the real attic. Because George Stevens had made exactly that.
So he took you around.
And I'd felt I'd lived there because it took 6 months to shoot the film. And even in the summer, he would turn the heat up, so we would swelter. In the winter, he would turn the air conditioning on, so we would freeze. And we told the kid what to ask. He really didn't even know the questions to ask. And I guess it was successful because it appeared in front-page stories all over the world. And one of the things that Otto Frank said to me, I think God is punishing me by letting me live so long because I could not believe that the Allies would let Hitler get so powerful as to overrun Europe. Czechoslovakia and then Poland and then France and.
What do you feel about the Germans now getting together?
I have great qualms about it in terms of the United States and unifying Germany. I'll tell you, 2 times in this century, Germany has caused world wars and killed millions of people. They're remarkable people, and the young Germans I've met have been quite wonderful. I've done 2 films there.
Right.
But I think there is something in their history that they have to prove they're superior to everybody else. I hope it doesn't pass down from father to son and father to son. And I'm sure France and England are very frightened about that.
They are frightened, you feel this?
Mrs. Thatcher says so. I don't know whether there will be total unification, but if all those millions of people in East Germany are usurped into West Germany's industrial giant, they will. They're right now practically economically the most solid people in the world, except for Japan. And all these, what bothers me, how is the American taxpayer going to support all the people who we've talked into giving up communism?
Right.
Couldn't they give it up one at a time? They're all doing it together, and they're all asking us for help.
Shelley Winters, you have a lot of feeling about the human people out there, the human nature. You do, don't you?
Yes, I think the purpose of the actor is to illuminate the human condition. When you go to a film and you see a good actor, it's because you identify with them.
Right.
You know what they're feeling. And a good actor draws, I believe, from their own experience. And when it's true for him, it's true for you.
It's true.
If a director imposes a performance or you try to mimic somebody, it can be funny or brilliant, but it isn't moving.
George Stevens had a lot to do with your career.
Yes.
George Stevens.
I
want to know
adored him.
You tell me, I got to know one thing, Shelley. You had an appointment to meet him at the Beverly Hills Hotel. That story,
No, at the athletic club.
Athletic club?
He had tested many people.
For The Place in the Sun?
No? Yeah, for
Place in the Sun.
American Tragedy, and then it was
Tragedy.
called American Tragedy.
Yeah, okay.
And I had all this blonde bombshell publicity. There's some pictures in my book of it. And he wouldn't even see me.
Because you were so sexy.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
with all these, Double Life with Ronald Colman, and I had all this rah-rah publicity.
Yes.
And I finally found out that Greg Boutzer was his lawyer. And I met Greg Boutzer somewhere, and I begged him to that he should just see me. And also Norman Mailer was a friend of his. And I said, he can just meet me somewhere and talk to me. Because I read American Tragedy 2 or 3 times.
Right.
And I identified a great deal with the girl. I had worked in a factory when I was a kid. And finally, he agreed to meet me at the athletic club on Hollywood Boulevard. Anyway, I was in the middle of some jazzy picture at Universal, and I dyed my blonde hair brown. Right, I had like 2 days off, and I went to the Firestone factory and watched girls
downtown
on the
in LA.
bus. Yes, took buses and watched them, and I fixed my hair very flat with 2 bobby pins, and I had no makeup on, and I made myself some lunch in a brown paper bag, and I borrowed my sister's coat and clothes and brown and white shoes, and she has smaller feet than I do, so it was killing me. And I sat there with my bobby socks, and about 10 minutes before he got there, and he walked in and he looked around, his eyes went over me, and he sat down and he picked up a Life magazine and read it. And he started looking at his watch, and he got very annoyed, but I didn't move, like my feet were, hammered to the floor.
Right.
And then he started to get up and go, and I was going to say, Mr. Stevens, and I was just like this, and his head went back, and he said, he walked up to me and said, if I test you, will you let me photograph you like this? And I said, Mr. Stevens, if I get that part, you can photograph me any way you want to.
I love it. I love George Cukor when he made the remark about you would do anything, you would scrub floors.
Well, it was funny about
Shelley Winters.
When I did a Double Life.
Double Life with Ronald Colman?
He was a wonderful director, so I used to follow him around and listen to what he was saying. And one day about 6 o'clock, he turned around and said, I bet if I ask you to sweep up the stage, you'll do it. I said, yes, Mr. Cukor, I will.
Shelley Winters, what is the true theater? When I say true theater, is there a true theater?
Yes, I think there still is. In this electronic age where people are so conditioned to television and the movies, for the most part, the audience is from, 13 to 23. Yes. And the experience of sitting in an audience is so totally different from getting a cassette in your living room. You have to be part of an audience to feel the experience that the director and writer want you to feel. And you don't get it in your living room while you're going for a beer or a sandwich or the bathroom or something. It's different.
Acting studio, God. Go ahead.
Anyway, I teach actors, and I can only argue symposiums at the Actor Studio. But the only thing I can judge is from my own experience, and I've worked with Lee Strasberg for 30 years, and I work with Stanley Kubrick and Lolita and The Tenant, Roman Polanski and Robert Wise. I've been very lucky in my career to work with great directors. And I don't sit in my trailer. I sort of listen to what they're talking about and saying. And some of them let me come in the cutting room and tell me why they use that cut instead of that cut, why this is better. And what actors don't realize, it's not just what they do. It's what goes on in the air between them. On the stage, you're very aware of that.
Right.
But the first thing an actor has to learn is to listen, because listening is very active. See, I've seen your show a lot, and you're a great listener.
Oh, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I'm listening to you. Okay.
You are, Skippy. That's what
thank
makes
you.
your shows interesting. Because listening isn't just sort of hearing it,
Right,
it's absorbing it.
Yes.
And you're not thinking of what you're going to say next.
No, I'm listening
You're
to
going
you.
take it in.
Right, right.
And that's, when I teach, that's the first thing. And then I make, I don't know, I'm giving a lesson here or
You
something.
certainly are.
And then and really looking, I make kids do the mirror exercise, which is, you almost have to have an eye here. You've seen Harpo Marx do it, you know.
Right.
You anticipate, you could do it with me. Anticipate what I'm going to do. And do it at the same time. See if you can do it at the same time.
I almost.
See, you really have to listen, look and listen, and that's the first.
Why Shelley Winters devotes all her time to these young people at the Actors Studio
and other places. I teach
and other places. You teach.
Well, I tell you what I think about age. You know, you're like a kid, and I think we're much the same age. I think and no matter what line of work you're in, your life experience, when it's passed on to young people that can benefit from it, I think, and the best thing you can do as you get older is to teach and write and entertain.
Right.
Why do you hang around with young kids and have them perform at the places?
Because I enjoy life. I enjoy being around them. Because I'm up to date. I like to keep up to date.
And you enjoy contact with the next generation.
Yes, I do. Always. Yes.
When I'm with very active people my age, I don't feel very old. But when I'm suddenly with my peers my age, and we're playing bridge, and people are talking about their pains and aches and things, when I got plenty of them, I suddenly say, what am I doing here? I must be in the wrong peer group. I'm not as old as these people, and some of them, they're younger than me.
Right.
But I have that sense of connecting with young people.
Adlai Stevenson, I'm going to throw that name at you. One of my favorites. He should have been president. I don't know why.
Yes, he should have.
Am I
correct? Had a different world, yes. He was very highly intelligent, and he loved humanity better than himself.
Yes.
He was not a rich man by any sense, and he could have become a rich man and working for corporations or speeches or whatever. And he had so much to give the United States and the rest of the world. But both Kennedy had more charisma, I guess. He talked to an audience as if they all went to Harvard, and I don't think you can do that with American. He refused to talk down to people.
Yes.
And I knew him in the biblical sense, and we went out for a while, and I really adored him.
You devote your time to the Democratic
Party.
Yeah, a lot. Eleanor Roosevelt. I'm going to throw that name at you.
You mean Saint Eleanor Roosevelt?
Saint? What? Go ahead. Why
She was my role model even when I was little.
Really?
When I got a hot lunch at school during the Depression, I thought she personally was in the kitchen cooking it. And many times, I remember the first time I met her, I was absolutely stunned. It was at a Democratic rally, and somebody hadn't shown up.
Yes.
And they said, Miss Winters, would you please go out and talk, and for delay for a few minutes, and they'll be here, but you say something. I said, no, I can't. I don't have a written speech, so forth. And she came up over to me and put her arm around and said, Shelley, you're what we call an emotional Democrat. You're a little weak on facts, but your heart is in the right place.
Kennedy. You were very close to John F. Kennedy.
Well,
he loved you.
Not in the biblical sense.
Oh, no, I understand that.
He was a good friend, and his family I got to know during the campaign and the election and the days that he was president.
Why do we lose great people, Shelley? Why
I think that was the worst trauma for the whole world. You ask anybody in the world, I thought just America, but I've done it in England and Italy, and everybody knows where they were and what they were wearing the moment that Kennedy was assassinated. Yeah. Because he represented, it didn't matter what he really was, he managed to convey a new frontier, a new idea for the world of humanity and people loving each other and caring about each other. Yes. And we bought it, we wanted it. You know, Camelot. We all loved it and wanted it, and it was a terrible, terrible tragedy, a personal tragedy for everyone. And I think, unfortunately, in America anyway, we flopped over and we let greed be the idea.
When he died, I understand Robert Kennedy sent you a bust.
Yes, of his head.
Tell me about that moment when you received it. When you received it, how did Shelley Winters feel about that when you received it?
I couldn't go to the funeral.
You couldn't?
I could not. I got ill. I had the flu or something. I couldn't. I have such admiration for those Kennedy girls, and I guess it's their religion does it for them. But I felt like the world was over. In fact, this book, which is the middle part of my life, I tried to go on after Kennedy's death, and I couldn't. That was like the closing of an era. I said, okay, I try to do what I could. Now, from now on, I take care of number one.
Yes.
And I think everybody in the country kind of did that, and we stopped caring about other people. And you know, I remember the Depression vaguely, but I can't believe that we're allowing people to lie in the streets in the winter. And homelessness, and it's all part of it. It's, you know, from, you know, people. I never heard the word billion when I was a kid. Did you when you were in school?
Never.
Millionaire, maybe.
Billionaire,
but billions.
Never. No, it's
and it's all wrong.
It's vulgar, isn't it, Shelley?
Well, it's inhuman.
It's inhuman. Yeah, it is, isn't it?
You know, I don't know how to fix it, but I think that should be the focus of our society.
Directors. Some of the directors. Who do you really love? George Stevens?
Yes, him first. I did 3 pictures.
Who are they?
Yes.
Real quick, just maybe one more. One more. How about one more?
I did a little sort of Disney picture last year, and I had the first woman director, Linda Shane. And she's a young girl. I talked to her on the phone many times, and then when I walked on the set, it was called Purple People Eaters. She came up to me and I said, "Oh, hello, honey, you work in the wardrobe department?" And she said, "Miss Winters, I'm your director." And she was so sharp and so together. And I want to work with her again, and I think I probably will. We've got a project.
Shelley, when you're teaching acting at the Actors Studio, or any place, can you see a certain quality there? It's gonna what makes a star, or does someone has it or doesn't have it? Can you see that?
Well, you can't make the judgment too quick.
Right.
For instance, Jack Klugman did not really bloom as an actor until he was in his late 40s. He did View from the Bridge on some little theater and on Santa Monica Boulevard. He had played little bit parts. He was married to Brett Summers, and mostly he gambled. And suddenly he had a wonderful play to do, and he started to really let himself bloom. But it's very hard to tell because many people spend their whole life loving the theater and acting and trying, and nothing happens. And it's like a bug. If you get that love of the theater, it never goes away. Or, you know, films and all the love and concentration and studying that people do, they would become millionaires in any other branch of work that they give to theater.
What are the 3 proudest moments of Shelley Winters' life right now?
When my daughter got her diploma as a doctor, when I stood before both houses of Congress and the Supreme Court and all the diplomats, and John Kennedy introduced me to at the press photographer's ball.
Press photographer's ball.
Yes, and it was kind of a roast.
You
they
were
don't
the
have
mistress.
it in it.
You were the mistress.
I was the mistress of ceremonies. Yes, and only I and another. I forget. An actor, Jane Morgan.
Jane Morgan.
And
singer.
2 women, and all were men. And it was very funny. This is a late night show, isn't it?
Yes, go
ahead. And all the photographers were kidding Jack Kennedy. And he, you know, and he let them know, and he said, well, what you say, there's some truth, but I'm sure that none of, you know, that Boston accent, none of you gentlemen ever did to a photographer what I have done. You know, Jackie was a photographer when he met her.
He had a great sense of humor, did he?
Yes, he did. And charm, and I think he could not believe that people hated him. He didn't understand hate.
Really?
He couldn't understand that because of civil rights he had to be very, very careful. And I know that Stevenson didn't want him to go to Texas. If it would have happened someplace else, I guess, if they were gunning for him. But
Shelley Winters, I wanted to ask you a question about your daughter. You said
you we can't. No, you can't. No comment.
No, okay. She got married,
she's
though.
She's a private person.
Is she? She's a doctor, though.
She is, but she's a private person. And
you're very private, too, Shelley.
And I broke a rule by even mentioning that.
A lot of people say you're not private, but you're very private. You play low-key. You don't go certain places with certain people. You know.
Well, I go with you.
No, well, you know, I saw you in a play years ago, The Night of the Iguana. I was coming back from, oh, God, I love that show. You were on that show.
Yes.
How long did that play on Broadway?
A long time. I did it a year.
You loved the theater.
And I loved it. The lady who did my makeup today, I hope it makes me look young, Paula, it's quite wonderful. And her husband's here, Chris Jones.
Chris Jones
and he was in the play, and Jimmy Farentino and Margaret Leighton, and God.
Betty Davis did it.
Yes, Betty Davis opened in the show, and then for some reason she left it. Later on I found out. If you read my book, you'll find out.
Yes, go ahead.
And Frank Casaro, who had directed it, begged me to go into it to keep it running. It was such a special, weird kind of play that even though Tennessee wrote it, they didn't know whether it would run, and it was expensive production. And I went into it, and it was really fun. All the sort of, I guess I was having a delayed adolescence. This was, 20 years ago? In the 60s sometime.
60s, right.
Yes. And all the kids in the show had a rule. Kids, you know, some of them. I put myself in the kids category. This was the sort of crazy 60s. That we never went to sleep till dawn. And I used to get home and have breakfast with my daughter, and she would go to school, and I would go to sleep till matinee time. And it was sort of one of the freest time of my life, and we'd go to the Peppermint Lounge and twist.
You used to dance and carry on, yes.
Yeah, those days.
I want to know about Lolita. That's Charlotte, wasn't it? Or was that Charlotte?
Yes, Charlotte.
I think that was one of the... Go ahead.
I did a very stupid thing with that play. A picture.
With James Mason.
Yes, I think it was one of the best performances I ever did.
It was.
Stanley Kubrick directed it, and Ray Stark wanted me to... In those days, you submitted yourself as what category you wanted to be in. They don't do that now. Now people can vote for you in any category. And he said, I want to put you up in the supporting category. I'm sure you'll win it. I said, I've got 2 of those. You best actress or nothing. He said, it's going to be nothing, because there was a lot of fierce competition. So he was right, and I should have.
Patcha Blue.
Oh, that was
Elizabeth Hartman. What is that? Why, that lovely girl. Tell me about that.
Well, it's our age of drugs and sadness, and that's a Hollywood story. Like, she was a wonderful actress, extraordinary, and she had a beginning career that was very good, and I think it broke up her marriage. And I remember seeing her husband and her, and they were very happy when we were doing Patcha Blue.
Patcha Blue.
And I was really stunned when I found out she had committed suicide. It was in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. She jumped out the window.
You know who else died in Pittsburgh? Eleanor Duse.
Really?
And that was before they did something about the blast furnaces. And she wrote to someone in Italy, I do not have to go to hell now. I've seen Pittsburgh.
Tell me about your husband, Tony. Tony...
Which husband? You have to be more specific.
Well, Tony Franciosco. Let's get back to him. How many husbands have you had, Shelley?
3. Well, I had one during the Second World War.
Right.
Where we got married the New Year's Eve after December 7th, which was when the Japs attacked Korea.
Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. I'm mixing up my wars. And
we've had so many.
Yeah, we sure have. And we were married a short time, and then he went overseas. Well, let me answer the first question.
Okay.